The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, the Practical Vedanta, Part 1, Segment 3. This Atman is first to be heard of. Hear day and night that you are that soul. Repeat it to yourself day and night till it enters into your very veins, till it tingles in every drop of blood, till it is in your flesh and bone. Let the whole body be full of that one ideal. I am the birthless, the deathless, the blissful, the omniscient, the omnipotent, ever glorious soul. Think on it day and night. Think on it till it becomes part and parcel of your life. Meditate upon it, and out of that will come out work. Out of the fullness of the heart the mouth speaketh, and out of the fullness of the heart the hand worketh also. Action will come. Fill yourself with that ideal. Whatever you do, think well on it. All your actions will be magnified, transformed, deified by the very power of the thought. If matter is powerful, thought is omnipotent. Bring this thought to bear upon your life. Fill yourself with the thought of your almightiness, your majesty, and your glory. Would to God no superstitions had been put into your head. Would to God we had not been surrounded from our birth by all these superstitious influences and paralyzing ideas of our weakness and vileness. Would to God that mankind had had an easier path through which to attain to the noblest and the highest truths. But man had to pass through all this. Do not make the path more difficult for those who are coming after you. These are sometimes terrible doctrines to teach. I know people who get frightened at these ideas, but for those who want to be practical, this is the first thing to learn. Never tell yourself or others that you are weak. Do good if you can. Do not injure the world. You know in your innermost mind that many of your limited ideas, this humbling of yourself and praying and weeping to imaginary things are superstitions. Tell me one case where these prayers have been answered. All the prayers that came were from your own hearts. You know there are no ghosts, but no sooner are you in the dark than you feel a little creepy sensation. That is so because in our childhood we have had all these fearful ideas put into our heads. But do not teach these things to others through fear of society and public opinion, through fear of incurring the hatred of friends, or fear of losing cherished superstitions. Be masters of all these. What is there to be taught more in religion than the oneness of the universe and faith in one's own self? All the works of mankind for thousands of years past have been towards this one goal. And mankind is yet working it out. It is your turn now and you are already knowing the truth. First of it has been taught on all sides. Not only philosophy and psychology, but materialistic sciences have declared it. Where is the scientific truth? Man today fears to acknowledge the truth of this oneness of the universe. Who is there who dares talk of many worlds? All these are superstitions. There is only one life and one world, and this one life and one world is appearing to us manifold. This manifoldness is like a dream. When you dream, one dream passes away and another comes. You do not live in your dreams. The dreams come one after another, scene after scene unfolds before you. So it is with this world of 90% misery and 10% happiness. Perhaps after a while it will appear as 90% happiness and we shall call it heaven. But a time comes to the stage when the whole thing vanishes, and this world appears as God Himself, and his own soul as God. It is not therefore that there are many worlds. It is not there that there are many lives. All this manifoldness is the manifestation of that one. That one is manifesting himself as many as matter, spirit, mind, thought, and everything else. It is that one manifesting himself as many. Therefore, the first step for us to take is to teach the truth to ourselves and to others. Let the world resound with this ideal and let superstitions vanish. Tell it to men who are weak and persist in telling it. You are the pure one. Awake and arise, O mighty one. This sleep does not become you. Arise and awake. It does not befit you. Think not that you are weak and miserable. Almighty, arise and awake and manifest your own nature. It is not fitting that you think yourself a sinner. It is not fitting that you think yourself weak. Say to the world, say to your own selves, and see what a practical result comes. See how with an electric flash everything is manifested, how everything is changed. Tell that to mankind and show them their power. Then we shall learn how to apply it in our daily lives, to be able to use what we call viveka, to learn how in every moment of our lives, in every one of our actions, to discriminate between what is right and wrong, true and false. We shall have to know the test of truth, which is purity, oneness. Everything that makes for oneness is truth. Love is truth, and hatred is false. Because hatred makes for multiplicity. It is hatred that separates man from man. Therefore, it is wrong and false. It is a disintegrating power. It separates and destroys. Love binds. Love makes for that oneness. You become one. The mother with the child, families with the city, the whole world becomes one with the animals. For love is existence, God Himself, and all this is the manifestation of that one love more or less expressed. The difference is only in degree, but it is the manifestation of that one love throughout. Therefore, in all our actions, we have to judge whether it is making for diversity or for oneness. If for diversity, we have to give it up. But if it makes for oneness, we are sure it is good. So with our thoughts, we have to decide whether they make for our disintegration, multiplicity, or for oneness, binding soul to soul and bringing one influence to bear. If they do this, we will take them up, and if not, we will throw them off as criminal. The whole idea of ethics is that it does not depend on anything knowable, unknowable. It does not teach anything unknown, but in the language of the Upanishad, the God whom you worship as the unknown God, the same I preach unto thee. It is through the self that you know anything. I see the chair, but to see the chair, I have first to perceive myself and then the chair. It is through the self that the chair is perceived. It is in and through the self that you are known to me, and the whole world is known to me. And therefore, to say this self is unknown is sheer nonsense. Take off the self, and the whole universe vanishes. In and through the self, all knowledge comes. Therefore, it is the best known of all. It is yourself, that which you call I. You may wonder how this I of me can be the I of you. You may wonder how this limited I can be the unlimited infinite. But it is so. The limited is a mere fiction. The infinite has been covered up, as it were, and a little of it is manifesting as the I. Limitation can never come upon the unlimited. It is a fiction. The self is known, therefore, to every one of us, man, woman, or child, and even to animals. Without knowing him, we can neither live nor move, nor have our own being. Without knowing this Lord of all, we cannot breathe or live a second. The God of the Vedanta is the most known of all and is not the outcome of imagination. If this is not preaching a practical God, how else could you teach a practical God? Where is there a more practical God than He whom I see before me? A God omnipresent in every being, more real than our senses. For you are He, the omnipresent God Almighty, the soul of your souls. And if I say you are not, I tell an untruth. I know it, whether at all times I realize it or not. He is the oneness, the unity of all, the reality of all life and all existence. These ideas of the ethics of Vedanta have to be worked out in detail, and therefore you must have patience. As I have told you, we want to take the subject in detail and work it up thoroughly to see how the ideals grow from very low ideals and how the one great ideal of oneness has developed and become shaped into the universal love. And we ought to study these in order to avoid dangers. The world cannot find time to work it up from the lowest steps. But what is the use of our standing on higher steps if we cannot give the truth to others coming afterwards? Therefore, it is better to study in all its workings, and first it is absolutely necessary to clear the intellectual portion. Although we know that intellectually it is almost nothing, for it is the heart that is of most importance. It is through the heart that the Lord is seen and not through the intellect. The intellect is only the street cleaner, cleansing the path for us, a secondary worker, the policeman. But the policeman is not a positive necessity for the workings of society. He is only to stop disturbances, to check wrongdoing, and that is all the work required of the intellect. When you read intellectual books, you think when you have mastered them, bless the Lord that I am out of them, because the intellect is blind and cannot move of itself. It has neither hands nor feet. It is feeling that works, that moves with speed infinitely superior to that of electricity or anything else. Do you feel? That is the question. If you do, you will see the Lord. It is a feeling that you have today that will be intensified, deified, raised to the highest platform, until it feels everything, the oneness in everything, till it feels God in itself and in others. The intellectual can never do that. Different methods of speaking words, different methods of explaining the texts of books, these are for the enjoyment of the learned, not for the salvation of the soul. Those of you who have read Thomas à Kempis know how in every page he insists on this, and almost every holy man in the world has insisted on it. Intellect is necessary, for without it we fall into crude errors and make all sorts of mistakes. Intellect checks these, but beyond that, do not try to build anything upon it. It is an inactive secondary help. The real help is feeling, love. Do you feel for others? If you do, you are growing in oneness. if you do not feel for others, you may be the most intellectual giant ever born, but you will be nothing. You are but dry intellect and will remain so. And if you feel, even if you cannot read any book and do not know any language, you are in the right way. The Lord is yours. Do you not know from the history of the world where the power of the prophets lay? Where was it? In the intellect? Did any of them write a fine book on philosophy? On the most intricate ratiocinations of logic? Not one of them. They only spoke a few words. Feel like Christ and you will be a Christ. Feel like Buddha and you will be a Buddha. It is feeling that is the life, the strength, the vitality without which no amount of intellectual activity can reach God. Intellect is like the limbs without the power of locomotion. It is only when feeling enters and gives them motion that they move and work on others. That is so all over the world, and it is the one thing which you must always remember. It is one of the most practical things in Vedantic morality, for it is the teaching of the Vedanta that you are all prophets and all must be prophets. The book is not the proof of your conduct, but you are the proof of the book. How do you know that a book teaches truth? Because you are truth and feel it. That is what the Vedanta says. What is the proof of the Christs and the Buddhas of the world? That you and I feel like them. That is how you and I understand that they were true. Our prophet soul is the proof of their prophet soul. Your Godhead is the proof of God Himself. If you are not a prophet, there never has been anything true of God. If you are not God, there never was any God and never will be. This, says the Vedanta, is the ideal to follow. Every one of us will have to become a prophet, and you are that already. Only know it. Never think there is anything impossible for the soul. It is the greatest heresy to think so. If there is sin, this is the only sin, to say that you are weak or that others are weak.